very, very dangerous.
Get these spidey sense, I was like, oh, something's off.
And I'm just like, man, I'm waiting to hear something,
Keep that crowd warmed up. There's Mr. Jehovah Tiger.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to another edition of the Warcry Podcast. I am your host, Jehovah Tiger, and on this edition of the podcast, we'll be talking about space conspiracies. And with these conspiracies now, hear me out. They're kind of crazy, some of them. Y'all gonna look at me like, this man has lost it. He is no longer with us. We need to bring him back because he's gone. He's gone forever. Anyways, no, but we're gonna be talking about space conspiracies, and when you're listening to space conspiracies, when you hear this episode, and you're like, man, Yehova's really going off right now. He's, let me tap that link. Let me tap that link in the bio and get myself a T-shirt for this man that's talking about these space conspiracies. Hit the link in the bio, guys. Get yourself a shirt, a sticker. Get yourself something nice. I even got mugs on there. Get yourself something nice. I appreciate everyone that has continued to support the podcast in this way by buying a T-shirt. And let me know when you get a T-shirt and send me a picture of it, so I can post it or do what I do with it, and I can tell you thank you, because everyone that has continued to support the podcast by buying a T-shirt or a sticker or a hat, it is much appreciated. But let's get to the episode. So, first conspiracy I want to talk about, is one. It basically has been a theory since the dawn of time. Everyone talks about the firmament in the Bible, and the firmament to me and how I internalize it and think about it is I think about it as like a snow globe or like a fishbowl. And so for those of you guys that don't know what the firmament is, or maybe not, you're just an avid conspiracy person, or a novice, not avid, novice, and you're not really into conspiracies. So the firmament is basically what, in the Bible, it is like a barrier between the heavens and us here on earth. And it's looked at in multiple ways by different people in different conspiracies. But how I think about it is that we basically, like I said, live in a snow globe, and we're surrounded by water, or we're surrounded, by some type of liquid. There has been a few TikTok videos going around about, and it was also a Discovery Channel. I remember seeing this back in the day, but it was like in the early 2000s. And there was a scientist, and I cannot remember his name, but he had went down to the deepest part of the ocean, and I believe that's the Mariana Trench. And he had seen a liquid that looked like water, and they go down, and it had these like ripples, like it was rippling consistently in a certain way, in a certain motion. And he tries to, they try to get into it. They try to go into this liquid or this, type of water, and they were unable to. It was like a barrier almost. And so he thought that was strange, and so he got it on video. And later on, I believe maybe a year later, in this, at the timing of this documentary, and it comes out, Discovery Channel basically takes it out, like doesn't show it again. I haven't seen it on Discovery Channel, like on this, for like streaming, and I don't even know the name of the documentary, but I remember seeing it like randomly, because as you guys know, I'm a nerd. I watch different things, but I remember seeing that. And I haven't been able to find it since, until it came and resurfaced here in the last probably 10 years, maybe 5 years. I saw it on Facebook videos, and then I also saw it on Instagram. But here recently, it came back on TikTok, and excuse me, and it has made the rounds. Well, the man that had put out that video at the time of this publishing to everyone, and this video coming out back in the early 2000s or mid 2000s, whatever time frame, he was found in a mysterious circumstances dead. And he had revealed maybe some video that wasn't supposed to go out to the public. And so this got everybody at the time going crazy about the firmament and about this operation that our government, and I believe Russia also had some dealings with. And this operation is called Operation Fishbowl. This was declassified. And so back in 1952, our government basically shot up nuclear warheads up to space to see what would happen. And I believe Albert Einstein, it was the guy that created the Oppenheimer. he said basically don't warned the government and said, please do not do this. This is going to get bad. You saw what we did to the Japanese and basically destroyed an entire city with one bomb. Do not send these bombs up into the atmosphere. Well, like how we got to do as humans. We got to say, hey, let's just try it out. Let's just see what happens. And we send nuclear bombs up into the atmosphere, up into the sky, and they blow up. And when they blow up, it mushroom clouds around what looked like a barrier. So it exploded, and then all the runoff or whatever you want to call it, the explosion started running down like almost in the clouds of the I am butchering this, guys, but the clouds of this explosion or this whatever this dust is, nuclear dust, falls around this almost like a dome. And so both governments basically go, I don't know if we should be doing this. So we sign a treaty with, basically multiple countries in the world, and we say, hey, let's not do this anymore. And so in 1953, a year later, they decide to sign a treaty and not do this anymore. And people believe, now this is conspiracy, space conspiracy, obviously, episode, that our government and multiple governments around us put in all their chips to see if we could break that firmament, to see what's on the other side of this barrier. Now, this goes into a whole bunch of other theories. And one thing about that operation is it made people kind of question, maybe there isn't space. We look back and we go all the way back to 1500s or even 1400s, even before that, when we first started sailing, when humans as a race were sailing across the seven seas, and they only drew topical maps of what they could see. And some of these maps didn't have, basically was like a wall around us, essentially. Now people always make that, this statement like, oh, well, what are they going to do? Fall off the side of the earth? But that's where this theory of flat earth comes in. And this is where this theory of the aliens were always here theory. And you guys have heard me on different podcasts talk about, maybe humans are the alien, and that whoever was here before us, are the ones driving around in these crazy tic-tac UFOs. And, one thing that's crazy about those two theories specifically is if there's no space, then the aliens were here, then what does that mean for us going to the moon? And one thing that's kind of crazy about flat Earth and that the fact that we may not, maybe the aliens are already here, is that my thought is too, is what if there's more continents? And what if we're surrounded by an ice ball? Or Antarctica is really not just this section of the planet that's on top. Well, what if it's really, we look at it from the bottom side up, and that's basically the ring that keeps us within our continent. And really that, Antarctica and, the Arctic is really the barriers that's keeping us within our section of this Earth. Now, I've had people ask me what if I believed in flat Earth, and I'm not a flat Earther. There's something off about that. But there's also things that I'm very curious to know what is what. And I personally don't believe there's aliens. I believe that we are the aliens. That's what I believe. Humans are the aliens. And I've said this a million times. But that goes into a whole nother thing that is space real. There has been people come out over the course of the last 50 years. And I know everybody talks about the moon landing and it being fake. And, there's two different arguments in that whole debate on if we went. There are photographic evidence of us taking pictures of the moon, and there's rover marks and there's footsteps. They're very clear. But at the same time, you look at the Stanley Kubrick, conspiracy that basically we filmed all of that on Earth and we did it in a way that made it look like we were on space. And I know Kubrick's daughter came out. I mean, if I'm saying his name wrong, y'all let me know. I might be butchering that too. But his daughter came out some years ago and said that her dad had mentioned that, hey, this might, everything isn't what it seems. Now, he could have been talking about Hollywood. He could be talking about the moon. But that's always been a theory that's went around. But something that opposes that theory, and Billy Carson, if y'all haven't heard him, he was on Flagrant 2 podcast here recently with Andrew Schultz. but he is a guy that, and I think his Instagram, if you want to see some of his videos, are pretty. There's some pretty crazy stuff he talks about that. I'm kind of like, maybe. But he had mentioned there was an operation or a mission that was called Clementine back in the day, and during this time when we're talking about Clementine, there was basically this. I don't know if this is an android or like a robot or something, but basically went to the moon and was taking pictures of the moon from a certain distance, and then all of a sudden Clementine just ceases. Like they can't control the robot. They don't know where the robot is. They don't know where any of this information or wherever this thing is, and they end up getting the data back. But from Clementine. Well, something had hit Clementine when I say she, obviously Clementine's a woman's name, but well, I mean anyway. Okay, anyways, we're not gonna go there, but but you look at, but they these pictures came back, and I'm messing with the audio here, guys. Sorry about that. But you look at the pictures that Clementine come out, and you can find these pictures, but basically there were structures, and it looked like some of them pyramids. Other looks like almost like they're bases inside the earth. People have even seen faces on the earth, or on the earth, on the moon. People have even seen what look like tunnels in the earth, which is very interesting. If you think about it. Billy Carson is the one that I've seen that from, and he has a lot of information that might be very interesting. If you like those things. But kind of moving on about space, when we talk about the moon and the structures, the structures is another conspiracy, the Clementine conspiracy. Another kind of conspiracy that's here that you guys may have heard of here recently on TikTok, and allegedly there is a meteor coming to Earth here in 2029, April 13th, 2029, I believe. And Neil deGrasse Tyson is the one that kind of revealed this, but this was in a recent article here in the last couple months, basically talking about this asteroid that's going to be either hit the Earth or get close to it. Now, people have been saying, "Oh, this asteroid has a 30% chance of hitting us." Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson came out later on and said, "Well, it's probably really more like a 1% or less than a 1% chance." But what's crazy about this conspiracy about this asteroid is that when it's coming to Earth, it's going to be about 20,000 miles from from Earth's surface. And during that time, there is a 7-year ring, like a 7-year ring that has basically a keyhole. And that's what they call, I guess, pockets of that's how you get like space dust or whatever, or, little space rocks coming to Earth. Is there's these little pockets that have, I guess, it's like almost like a release valve, I guess, for the atmosphere or whatever. I don't know. This above my pay grade, but basically, the theory is, and the conspiracy is that if that asteroid hits that keyhole at the perfect time, it will hit the Earth. So the time that it goes by the Earth is 2029. But if it hits that keyhole, it then will take 7 years from that keyhole to the Earth before it hits the Earth. And they're talking about exactly 7 years from April 13th. So it'll be April 13th. 2020, or I'm sorry, 2036, which is kind of crazy in itself, because if you guys have seen the movie Don't Look Up, that's kind of essentially what he's talking about. But he had said this years ago. But it's kind of interesting to see, how that shakes out. But that's his conspiracy. There's been people on TikTok talking about, oh, this is the end of the world, and about 10 years ago, scientists who were looking at this, now they look at this every day, like this is an everyday thing that they look at. They were very worried because 30% chance of the Earth getting hit is 30% too much for me, because I got things to do in my life, and I know everybody else does too. And so they were worried about that, but they didn't want to scare the public. And it's kind of funny that they did almost sort of like a spoof of that information in Don't Look Up. Now, I don't know if that's a real, like, oh, they took this idea of Apophis, let's go ahead and let's make a movie out of it. But everyone ends up dying in the end, and then we get sent off to Mars. That's another thing too. That's a space conspiracy that Elon Musk kind of talked about just very briefly. And I mentioned on the previous episode that there was a remote viewer who had seen basically the surface of Mars, and there used to be water on Mars. but there were structures that he saw, old pyramids, and I know Elon Musk had said that basically he believes that maybe we came from there, and that it is a viable if they can fix the terrain and fix the you know if they fix the I guess the atmosphere or whatever, and they always say that another theory is that the ancient wars happened on Mars and we brought that to Earth to kind of basically say, oh, don't do this. This is what happens when the gods fight. But it happened on Mars, and that we came to Mars, and that's kind of another reference to Don't Look Up, because they go to another planet within our solar system that is able to support us in our life. But it's pretty interesting for the people that like those kind of space conspiracies. There's one conspiracy that I'm a little afraid to talk about, and I'll talk about it very briefly because it involves people that had passed on national television. And if you know what I'm about to talk about, I'm pretty sure that you probably saw it. But it is the conspiracy that the Challenger explosion, the people that were on that are not actually dead, and that was actually a psychological operation to basically put off going to space because space isn't real. That's the conspiracy. Now, if you do some digging, you do some research, you type in Challenger explosion, and you do research, there are people out there that have dedicated their entire existence to this conspiracy. And one thing that is so intriguing about this conspiracy is that there are people that look like the people from the Challenger that are doing the same thing but with alternate names. And one thing that people talk about with this conspiracy is that that basically that happened, and they proceeded their lives in basically witness protection. Which this is going, like I say, this sounds crazy. That's why I'm kind of hesitant to talk about it. But they say that those people are still around, and I don't really don't want the flag. I don't want those men in black people coming to my house, getting a knock on the door at 2 a.m., being like, "What's going on? Who are you?" And they hit me with that little flash, and now you guys don't have a podcast because I don't remember having a podcast. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know, but that's a conspiracy that's been out there for a while. That those people were out there, and someone actually confronted one of the. I think it was the teacher on there. Basically, confronted this teacher outside of a lecture that they were having, like a national convention, like it was a conference that they were talking about. And they said, "You look like a lot like this person who died on the Challenger in whatever year." And this person was like, "I'm not sure who you're talking about." Started getting all nervous. I don't know who you're speaking about. That wasn't me. And they did like a side by side, and this person looked exactly like the person on the Challenger. Pretty crazy stuff. But if you want to go research that, that's a whole rabbit hole. I mean, I watched like a 4-hour documentary on that one night back on like when YouTube was like full of those documentaries or full of those videos. But it's very interesting when it comes to different space conspiracies. Now, there's so many more. Like I mentioned earlier, flat Earth is another one. Aliens aren't real or aliens are real. There's this conspiracy that the aliens are actually living on the the dark side of the moon, and that's where they have their base, and that's where they come and see us. That's another conspiracy that's been around for forever. I don't know if I believe that, but that's I guess it's not up for me to know. But like I said, guys, it is a little spicy when we start talking about people's religions and what's real and what's not, and that's why I enjoy conspiracies, because sometimes they could be real, like it could be a real thing, like it could be something that is actually happening. And I mentioned briefly that psyops are happening all the time, and in social engineering, like they show what they're doing to us on TV. So anyone who watches reality TV, like those shows, Love Is Blind, which hey, I'm guilty, I'll be on that. But they tell us what they do in front of us. How to tinker with the way we think, how we think. Like most people go through life and they meet their significant other somewhere in person. But a lot of times you connect with somebody off. This is like Love Is Blind. Where you connect with someone off your personality, what you think, your opinions, and you never see them, and you fall in love with that person, and then you see them, and you're like, oh wow, I would have never given that person the time of day, or I never would have talked to that person. That's a social experiment. They're doing that to us all the time, and they tell us these production companies and these different people that come up with these ideas. It's just interesting. Like Survivor is a huge one. You're stuck on an island with with 20 people, or 10 people, and you're forced to survive by any means necessary. Now there are rules, and I'm sure that they get help, and there's medical attention. But you see people who they really are when they're hungry. Like this past season that just came out. I think about it. I think I am gonna. If you guys are Survivor likers, or you love likers, Survivor lovers like I am, I may do an episode just like a 10-minute episode on just Survivor alone. But that's what that is. That's a social experiment, and they test that, and they see how people react to certain situations of being hungry, not sleeping. Somebody talked about wanting to talk about the Russian sleep experiment. That's exactly what that is. They don't want you to they try to tell you these things, and I think we kind of miss it. But there's so many conspiracies out there, that it's going to take a lifetime for me to cover. But I hope you guys liked this episode. Didn't have an episode last week for whatever reason. Memorial Weekend comes up. I had a whole bunch of family over, and just having a good time. Now being back in the Tulsa area makes life a little bit easier to see the people I care about and people I love. And so I apologize for not having an episode this week. Hopefully this episode gets you thinking a little bit. And I appreciate everyone that continues to support the podcast. And I'll catch you on the next one.